The Galactic Accord was never built on fairness, it was built on fear. Established by the oldest species in the galaxy, it served as a diplomatic empire masquerading as a peacekeeping coalition. For centuries, it dictated trade, regulated technology, and kept young species in check. Humanity, the latest edition, had always walked a thin line. Bold, innovative, dangerous. The Accord called them unpredictable. Behind closed doors, they said unstable. Now the accusations had reached a crescendo. Ambassador Oren Kale stood alone before the Core Council on Helior Prime, humanity's only voice in a chamber that had long since turned hostile. Towering delegates from across the stars, Drexari, Thaloon Vixari matrons, glared down at him with a mix of disdain and thinly veiled fear. The accusations were read aloud by Council Speaker Zarel. Unauthorized development of hypershift weaponry, illegal terraforming in restricted zones, covert genetic experiments on uplifted species. Kale calmly, methodically refuted each charge, with time-stamped logs, trade records, and verified testimony. But evidence didn't matter. The verdict had already been decided before he stepped into the room. This council, Zarel announced, finds Earth in violation of the Accord's stabilization doctrine. Effective immediately, all Terran military expansion must cease. Trade with non-sanctioned colonies is prohibited. Failure to comply will result in enforcement. Kale didn't flinch. His voice, calm and quiet, echoed across the chamber. We have abided by your rules. We have honored your treaties. And still, you push us closer to the edge. The Vixari delegate scoffed. You mistake structure for oppression, Ambassador. Kale met his gaze. You mistake silence for compliance. Outside, a cold storm raged across Helior Prime's capital city. Inside, the diplomatic storm had already broken. The council expected capitulation, some carefully worded apology followed by hollow compliance. What they got instead was something none of them recognized. Restraint cloaked in warning. After a long pause, Kale activated a secure channel back to Earth. A single word passed through the encrypted line, broadcast only to key figures in Sol. Prepare. That word sparked a cascade. On Earth, Supreme Strategist Elira Voss received it without surprise. In deep orbit, satellite arrays turned inward. Military research hubs shifted from theoretical modeling to full-scale prototyping. Colonies on Titan, Europa, and Alpha Centauri entered silent readiness. Civilian media remained calm, unaware of the storm rising behind the curtain. Back in the council chamber, Kale gave a formal bow. We will respond to your demands, he said, but you may not like how. The Thaloon delegate leaned forward, tentacles twitching. Are you threatening this body, Ambassador? Kale's eyes were unreadable. No, I am simply reminding you of a truth you've long forgotten. We asked for peace. We still ask for it, but we will not beg. As he departed, a hush fell over the chamber, not from awe but from an uncomfortable realization. Humanity had not postured, they had not pleaded, they had simply warned. And for the first time in generations, the galaxy held its breath. Because something was coming, and it wouldn't be more words. The sanctions came swiftly. Within days of Ambassador Kale's veiled warning, the Galactic Accord moved to isolate Earth. Terran trade ships were barred from major interstellar ports. Joint research programs were suspended. Automated tariffs froze galactic banking transactions, tied to Terran identifiers. The message was clear: submit or suffocate. But Earth had been preparing long before the threats were spoken. To the rest of the galaxy, it looked like a tightening noose. Terran colonies, scattered across over a dozen systems, were suddenly vulnerable. The Mars foundries, crucial to ship production, reported strange telemetry disruptions. The deep-sea extractors on Europa went offline without explanation. A power relay burst on Titan, destroying an entire sector's energy grid. It looked like accidents. The Accord said nothing, offering neither aid nor acknowledgement. But on Earth, Supreme Strategist Elira Voss saw the pattern immediately. Covert sabotage. Sleeper agents planted during prior diplomatic exchanges had been activated. infrastructure, wasn't failing. It was being dismantled from within. In response, she enacted Operation Ashwake. Ashwake wasn't a fleet mobilization. It wasn't troop deployment. It was silence, the most deafening kind. Across the Sol system, Terran infrastructure went dark. Satellite constellations encrypted their signals and shifted into stealth mode. Civilian communication remained undisturbed, but anything connected to defense, logistics, or strategic operations simply disappeared, the Accord noticed. Their sensors, once able to track every Terran fleet movement in real time, now returned static. Military analysts panicked. The galaxy had always relied on Terran transparency. Humans had shared everything: trade, routes, tech specs, even fleet movements during peacetime. But now everything vanished behind a digital curtain. The council met in emergency session. Speaker Jirel labeled it an act of escalation. But no military action had been taken. No border had been crossed. Earth had simply gone quiet. Meanwhile, across Sol, strange activity emerged. Deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, an ancient undersea complex, long thought abandoned, flared to life. On Phobos, mining ceased as engineers began installing what appeared to be an array of unknown energy conductors. Outposts on the edge of the Oort cloud began transmitting to coordinates that didn't match any Accord-registered frequencies. But perhaps most telling was what happened on the Moon. A joint Drexari Thaloon stealth team inserted via warp skip infiltrated Luna's shadowed region to investigate an old Terran listening post. They reported initial success, breaching the station without resistance. What they found, however, was something else entirely: a decoy. The base was operational, but every system was a facade: false files, fake signal logs, mock security protocols. Before they could exfiltrate, the entire facility sealed shut. Transmissions ceased. A final image, sent milliseconds before the blackout, showed a symbol spray-painted on the wall in Terran red. "We see you." Back on Helior Prime, council analysts were stunned. No bodies were recovered, no explosion registered. Just silence. Once again. Strategist Voss addressed Earth's High Command in private. "We will not strike first," she said. "But if they continue to tighten the rope, they'll discover we turned the noose into wire." The galaxy still hadn't declared open war. Not yet. But Earth had stopped explaining itself, and the galaxy was beginning to realize it didn't know humanity as well as it thought. The galaxy's gamble was simple: pressure humanity hard enough and they would fold. Every younger species had done so before, especially the ones who dared grow too quickly. But humanity wasn't like the others. And on the mining colony of Halcyon 3, the galaxy made a fatal miscalculation. Halcyon 3 was a peaceful Terran civilian colony, orbiting a small yellow star near the Thaloon border. With no weapons platforms and no military presence, it was used primarily for helium-3, harvesting and deep core research. The Accord suspected otherwise. They believed it was a covert weapons lab, masked as civilian infrastructure, because they couldn't believe humans would waste such a strategic location on mere mining. So the Accord acted. Without warning, an Accord cruiser Velcor dropped out of warp above Halcyon 3. Its captain, a Drexari zealot named Commander Irix Mar, ordered an orbital strike on the power facility to disable what he believed were weapon systems. In truth, he didn't expect resistance. What he got was carnage. The bombardment killed 9,028 civilians in under 3 minutes. The footage leaked. It wasn't supposed to. The Accord moved fast to cover it up. But humans had learned long ago how to make data indestructible. A hidden beacon on the colony's surface transmitted a dead man's file into public galactic channels. The images were clear. Families buried under rubble. Children pulled from collapsed shelters. Engineers burned alive in their labs. No weapons were found, only tools, harvesters, and medical facilities. The galaxy watched in horror. Accord-aligned species scrambled to justify the attack, calling it a tragic misunderstanding. The Core Council labeled it a regrettable but necessary precaution. But the damage was done, not just to the colony but to the illusion of the Accord's moral authority. Civilian populations across neutral worlds began to protest. "We were told the Terrans were monsters," one Nalari news host said, "but we just watched them bleed." On Earth, everything stopped. The footage played across Terran networks for less than an hour before being blacked out by military command. Not out of censorship, but mourning. Supreme Strategist Elira Voss addressed the United Terran Assembly in person. She stood before the world, her voice heavy with grief and fury. "We offered peace. We obeyed your laws. We bent to your customs. And when we asked for truth, you gave us ash." In that moment, Earth's mask shattered. Ambassador Oren Kale was recalled from Helior Prime. Terran diplomats across the galaxy burned their credentials and left their stations. Civilian merchant ships began returning to home systems under military escort. The Terran Confederacy broadcast a final message to the Galactic Accord. "You killed our children, you slaughtered our people, and you call it protocol. We asked for peace. You answered with blood. You will not like what comes next." Then came the silence. The next time an Accord warship approached a Terran system, it was met by something terrifying. 6 Terran warships uncloaked at once, sleek, black, invisible to all known sensors. They surrounded the Accord vessel without firing. One transmission was sent: "Leave. Tell them, this is the line. You already crossed it." The Accord vessel jumped away without a word. The fuse had been lit, and the stars were about to burn. The galaxy braced for retaliation, but what came next shattered every prediction. The Galactic Accord expected rage, missile strikes, open fleets, perhaps even suicide attacks. They were prepared for blunt, furious retaliation. What they received was precise, deliberate, and terrifying in its efficiency. Humanity didn't lash out. They dismantled. Within 72 hours of the Halcyon 3 massacre, over a dozen deep space satellites belonging to Accord-aligned systems went offline. No explosions. No warnings. Just silence. Intelligence networks found their quantum relays severed, mid-transmission. Orbital defense platforms, once considered unbreachable, were rendered inert. When engineers arrived to investigate, they discovered their cores had been overwritten by code with a chilling message burned into the data. "This is the price of watching us die." It wasn't warfare, it was humiliation. Earth wasn't trying to destroy the Accord. It was showing them how easily it could. Then came the blackouts. Accord banking systems in 5 core worlds collapsed in perfect synchrony. Planetary commerce froze as AI finance networks entered infinite error loops. Dozens of worlds fell into panic. Entire colonies couldn't access water or food because the logistics AI, systems based on Terran code sold years ago, had been rewritten remotely. By the time the Accord's emergency task force responded, Earth had already relinquished control. But not before sending a final message. "We taught you how to build it. We never taught you how to secure it." It became clear then, Earth had never trusted the Accord. Every trade deal, every shared technology, every diplomatic entente, each had a backdoor, a fail-safe, a trap. Earth hadn't integrated into the galaxy. It had infiltrated it. Supreme Strategist Elira Voss addressed Earth and its colonies in a secure planetary broadcast. "War isn't declared with flags," she said. "It's declared when those who claim to govern reveal they were never guardians, only jailers. We are not here to conquer. We are here to end the illusion that we ever needed permission to stand." Meanwhile, the Terran fleets, long mocked as small and overly stealth-reliant, began to emerge in force. Not from known bases or shipyards, but from dead moons, gas giant atmospheres, and asteroid fields marked uninhabitable on galactic charts. They bore names the Accord didn't recognize: Oblivion Lance, Pale Monarch, Vesper Arc, Endsong. Each vessel was a masterpiece of terrifying innovation: fusion lattice drives that moved without thermal signature, hulls that scattered scans into white noise, weapons that didn't fire beams or projectiles, but collapsed enemy shielding with spatial phase disruptions. And yet, Earth didn't attack civilian centers. It didn't glass planets. It didn't even destroy Accord fleets unless directly engaged. It moved with surgical intent, severing supply lines, disabling weapon caches, infiltrating strategic networks, and leaving warning glyphs in blood-red Terran script. You had your chance. Ambassador Oren Kale, now stationed aboard the Vigilant Silence, sent one final encrypted communique to Helior Prime. This is your last threshold. Stand down, or stand aside. In desperation, the Accord called an emergency session. Some demanded escalation. Others, for the first time in history, asked the unthinkable. What if they win? Because humanity wasn't just fighting. They weren't conquering. They were proving something terrifying. They had never needed the galaxy, and now the galaxy would learn what it meant to be hunted by the species they tried to contain. The Galactic Accord had ruled for over 1,000 years, not through strength, but unity. It had survived civil wars, extinction events, and the integration of dozens of volatile species. But it had never faced anything like this. Humanity was not breaking the Accord with brute force. It was unraveling it, thread by thread, faster than it could repair itself. Panic set in. The member worlds of the Accord, once bound by treaties and mutual trust, began to fracture. The outer rim systems, primarily trade-dependent, saw Terran supply routes disappear overnight. Their economies crumbled. Starving colonies accused their central governments of failure. Riots erupted on 3 core planets. On Turunve Accord, loyalists fired on their own citizens when food ration bots, once maintained by Terran firmware, ceased operation. No one understood how quickly things could fall apart, until they watched it happen. Earth hadn't launched a single planetary assault, and yet entire civilizations were teetering. Why? Because Terran infrastructure was everywhere. Their engineers had been on every major space station. Their software-powered diplomatic encryption protocols, agricultural automation, and even parts of the Accord's emergency fleet routing system. Earth didn't just integrate, it built the scaffolding beneath the entire galactic order, and now it was tearing that scaffolding down, without firing a shot. Meanwhile, internal dissent ripped through the Accord Council. Species once united now blamed one another. The Drexari were condemned for the Halcyon 3 massacre. The Thal'un were accused of leaking Terran cyber architecture without safeguards. The Zilari, longtime allies of Earth, abstained from a key vote to mobilize against Terran incursions. The Accord High Speaker was ousted after a no-confidence motion by her own delegation. The council chamber on Helior Prime, once a beacon of order, now stood divided and half-empty. And in the shadows, human operatives moved freely. In the orbital archive over Kasara Prime, an encrypted vault was breached. It held the classified records of the Accord's earliest encounters with pre-FTL Earth. Footage showed Terran leaders begging for entry into galactic society, offering peace and cooperation, and being denied, dismissed as barely sentient. By early Accord evaluators, that footage was leaked, and when it reached the public, something cracked. The narrative of Earth as an upstart aggressor collapsed under the weight of truth. Humanity had once been desperate for peace, and the galaxy had laughed in its face. Protests erupted across neutral worlds. "Let them burn it," one Voxari citizen screamed during a holostream. "We deserve it." The galaxy had seen war, but never like this, because Earth wasn't merely winning. It was teaching. Every coordinated strike, every system dismantled, every Accord ship left dead in the void without a single hull breach. It all served a singular message. You do not rule us. You never did. In one of the final Accord intelligence meetings, a Zaldrathi analyst spoke what no one else dared. "If we strike now, we might destroy their fleet," he said. But not their will, and not their memory. And if we fail, they'll make sure our grandchildren grow up in ruins wondering why we ever crossed them." The silence that followed was more chilling than any weapon. The Accord was no longer deciding if they had lost. They were deciding how long they could pretend they hadn't. The final blow didn't come as fire from the skies or a grand fleet descending upon the Accord's capital. It came as silence. The Terran Confederacy ceased all communications. No transmissions, no warnings, no ultimatums. For 3 standard days, the galaxy stood still. No Terran ships moved, no systems were struck, no data vanished. It was the calm before the reckoning. Then, on the 4th day, the stars themselves blinked. Not literally, but in systems where Terran stealth fleets had been shadowing Accord forces, sensor grids collapsed. Entire defensive satellites fell from orbit as their orbital trajectories were subtly nudged off course weeks earlier. Station reactors surged and shut down in cascading failures. Without a shot fired, humanity blinded the Accord's last remaining bastions. Then the shadows came. Across 12 systems simultaneously, black Terran vessels emerged from gravitic folds, ships so advanced even the most powerful Accord scanners couldn't lock onto them, not to bombard, not to glass cities, but to occupy select targets. They took only one thing: the record. Earth's agents raided data vaults, intelligence archives, and long-sealed Accord Council minutes. They exposed classified files, centuries of deception, evidence of species uplifted, then enslaved. Cultures sterilized through controlled integration, policies designed to stifle any world rising too fast. And above all, they found documentation confirming that Earth had once been slated for soft extermination, starved of tech and trade, left to collapse under its own weight. Humanity didn't hide this evidence. It broadcast it, in every galactic language. The reaction was explosive. Dozens of neutral systems declared independence from the Accord overnight. Former member states formally severed ties. Entire fleets defected. Accord loyalists, now hunted by their own citizens, fled to deep space. The once mighty galactic superstructure cracked, then crumbled. But Earth didn't build a new empire in its place. It didn't install governors, didn't plant flags, didn't even take territory. Instead, Supreme Strategist Elira Voss stood before a coalition of former neutral and independent species, live on every available network, and delivered the final verdict. This is not conquest. This is closure. The age of control is over. You feared we would burn your worlds. Instead, we burn the lies you built them on. There will be no confederacy, no replacement Accord. Humanity will not govern the stars. We will watch. We will remember. And should any power rise again with chains in hand, we will return. It wasn't domination, it was deterrence, and everyone understood it. On Helier Prime, where the Accord's central tower once pierced the sky, only rubble remained. In its place stood a black obelisk, forged from Terran neutron steel, bearing a single inscription in 100 languages: never again without consequence. The galaxy began to rebuild, differently this time. Trade routes reformed. Former enemies became allies. Borders blurred. But every planet, every station, every ship that launched into the void carried a silent understanding in its hull plating. Humanity had watched. Humanity had endured. Humanity had warned. And when ignored, they had not conquered. They had corrected. Now, as stars burned on and the ruins of the Accord faded into history, one truth lingered in the mind of every being across the stars. The galaxy would never again breathe easily, not while Earth still watched.